Hello and welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to another video. This one we are solving dilemmas for game week 9. So before we get into it, make sure you drop a like, make sure you subscribe. And the first dilemma is, should we sell Saka? Now, obviously he missed the game at the weekend against Bournemouth, which for owners wasn't ideal. Well, so, to be fair, some owners had someone like Rodgers, or I've seen some with Michael Keane on the bench who obviously came in for them and did brilliantly. But for Saka's price, we can't be holding him if he is going to miss a few games. So you can see the fixtures on screen there as well. The fixtures for the next 3 are pretty bad. Liverpool at home is very bad. Newcastle away is also red, but I think that might be, well, it's definitely not as bad a fixture as Liverpool at home. And then Chelsea away. Chelsea attacking wise are good. I'm not sure their defence is that good, so I think that's not that bad a fixture for an attacker, but it's the fact that it's Newcastle away and Chelsea away. They're both away games, so that isn't great. And then Nottingham Forest at home isn't even kind of a really good fixture, given that their defence has been pretty solid this season. But it's obviously not a bad one. From game week 13 onwards, Arsenal's fixtures are pretty good. So we will definitely want Saka from that point onwards. But for now, the problem is that there's so many other premiums that are performing and that we want. So from game week 10, Salah and Liverpool's fixtures get very good. Palmer is obviously fantastic. He's got a couple of good fixtures now before that Arsenal game. And then from game week 12, we'll all want him. Haaland obviously has Southampton at home this week. Ridiculously good fixture. And then Son's next 3 are brilliant as well. So for me, I do think Saka is a sell. Probably. For most teams, I think he's a sell, to be honest. Mainly just because I don't think that you'll want to hold him through these horrible fixtures anyway. I think, to be honest, he was probably a sell last week. But it does depend on your team. It is very team dependent, and it also depends how many transfers you have left and if you have a wild card left. So for my team, I still have a wild card to play, and I'm likely playing it in game week 12. So last week, Saka was an easy sell for me, given that he had 3 pretty tough fixtures before game week 12. So I could sell him for those weeks, get Son in for the good fixtures, and then wildcard Saka back in around game week 12. For other teams, it's a little bit more difficult, given that you definitely will want him back in 12 or 13. So there is a world where if you don't have many transfers and you don't have a wildcard, that if Saka's fit, then there is a world where it makes sense to keep him, given that it will be a transfer out and then a transfer back in a few weeks anyway. What I would say is that if you don't have Palmer, then it probably makes sense to sell Saka to Palmer. Palmer has slightly better fixtures than Saka in the short term, and we want Palmer from 12 anyway, so you can save yourself a transfer by going for Palmer over someone like Son. Son, for example, is great for the next 3 weeks, but after that, he can be dropped for the likes of Saka and Palmer. So it is very team dependent. I'd say if you've still got your wild card left, or if you've got a lot of free transfers, then I think it's fine to go Son for the next 3 weeks. But if you don't have many free transfers, you don't have a wild card, then I would maybe hold Saka if he's fit, or if not, then move to Palmer, as he's got okay fixtures in the short term and we'll definitely want him from game week 12 anyway. But hold your transfers on this one, so that we get more information on whether Saka is likely to be fit or not. Okay, next up we've got Eze. Now, he's just been a complete disappointment this season. He's had good numbers. He's had 5 or 6 big chances. He's had the 3rd most shots in the league, I think, but just hasn't resulted in attacking returns. He's got 1 goal so far, which just isn't good enough at his price. So should we be selling him or not? A lot of people have already lost their patience with him, and I completely understand why. I have him in my team currently, and for me, I will probably have to keep him given that I don't have enough transfers to use on selling him, I think. Basically, I kind of want to use my transfers in the short term on premium players. So from next week, I might try and have a shuffle round between Haaland and Salah. I need a couple transfers for that. And then if I don't play my wildcard in 12 or 13, then I need to get Saka and Palmer in. So I'm going to need my transfers elsewhere. So I think I'm going to have to keep Eze. But most people will probably be in a position to sell him, and if you can, then I think it's absolutely viable to do so. Palace just don't look good at the moment. I don't know quite what's happened to them, but at the back end of last season, they were absolutely brilliant. They were solid defensively and attacking wise. They were absolutely brilliant. Obviously, Elise's gone. I didn't think they would have this much of an impact losing one player though, given that Elise was actually injured for quite a lot of the time as well, so they are used to playing without him. But something's not working at Palace, so I think it's completely viable to sell. I put a tweet out on X earlier today about replacements in different price categories. So I put my top 3 options from the 5 to 6 million, then top 3 options from 6 to 7, top 3 options from 7 to 8. But the number 1 player is Mbeumo. If you don't have an Mbeumo and you can afford him, then he is the answer to your Eze problems. A couple of other options, like the budget ones, were players like Semenyo, McNeil, Rodgers. They were the 3 budget ones. 6 to 7 million was Johnson, Garnacho and Kulusevski. Spurs attack looks brilliant right now. And Man United have got some really good fixtures, and Garnacho looks pretty good at the moment too. He was brilliant at the weekend against Brentford. And then my 7 to 8 million category was Mbeumo, Maddison and Jared Bowen. West Ham are not looking great right now. Wouldn't surprise me if Lopetegui is sacked in the coming weeks, to be honest. West Ham have been horrible, really bad. More so defensively, granted. Going forward, they've looked okay, but defensively, they've looked horrible. They've got some good fixtures coming up, so I do quite like Bowen. He seems to be at the kind of forefront of everything they do going forward, and I think they'll be absolutely fine goal scoring wise. I think they'll just concede too many. But yeah, I like Bowen, I like Maddison, but if you haven't got Mbeumo, then he's definitely the one. Okay, going back to Arsenal now, and we're looking at William Saliba. He obviously got sent off at the weekend in the game against Bournemouth, which pretty much caused them to lose the game. It's been a bad start for Arsenal in terms of they've had 3 players sent off in the first 8 games, which something needs to be looked at there. It's not great for them. But as FPL owners of William Saliba, should we be selling him or should we be keeping him now? It is only a 1-match ban, so that is definitely worth noting. If it was a 3-match ban, you'd just sell him straight up, no questions asked. A 1-match ban, so there is a world where you could keep him. Now, obviously, we spoke about when we were talking about Saka how we want Arsenal players from game week 12 or game week 13. They're still the best, or one of the best defences in the league. So we will definitely want at least one Arsenal defender from game week 12, 13-ish. Now, if you've got a defender that you can play this week, I mean, this week's fixture isn't great anyway, Liverpool at home. There is a chance that you probably would have benched him. If you were planning to hold Saliba through this period, then there's a pretty big chance that you were going to bench him this week anyway. If you've got Saliba and Gabriel's better because of the goal threat, so you'd have played him over Saliba. If you've just got Saliba and other defenders, you probably would have tried to bench him anyway. So if you've got a good defender that you can play and bench Saliba, and your plan was to always keep him throughout this period, then I think he's fine to keep. But there is a world where you obviously want, if you've got double Arsenal defence, say you've got Gabriel and Saliba, I know quite a lot of people have that because they had a good run, then there's a world where you want to move to double attack from 12 or 13 onwards. The defence hasn't really paid off in the recent weeks, so there's a world where you want Saka and Havertz alongside Gabriel. If you are wanting to make that switch, then this is the perfect excuse to do it, really. You can sell Saliba for someone with some good fixtures, and we'll talk about the replacements in a second. But you can sell someone with some good fixtures, and then in a few weeks' time, you can get Havertz in or Saka back, whatever it is. so that you move off of double defence and onto the attackers, which I personally probably think is a better play. So that is definitely a thing to consider. Obviously, another one is the fixtures. The fixtures aren't great, so even though you're not going to be playing Saliba this week, if you keep him, Newcastle away, and Chelsea away aren't the best fixtures. Newcastle haven't been great, of course, at the start of this season, but I still back them to probably score. And then Chelsea away, Chelsea have been fantastic going forward, so that's definitely a tough game for any defence. So the fixtures aren't the best. If you think you can hold Saliba through this period, then I think that is a fine play, but I would probably move off of him, and we'll talk about some of the replacements for him now. Okay, now if I was going to sell Saliba this week, I would probably take him down to a budget option, and we'll look at the three on screen in a second. If you did want a premium option, I think the only play is Pedro Porro, to be honest. Spurs have got really good fixtures in the next three. He isn't quite as attacking as he was at the start of the season, but I still think he has attacking potential, and the Spurs attack is so good. Their defence leaves a bit to be desired, don't get me wrong, I'm not expecting too many clean sheets, but going forward, they are brilliant, and Porro is still getting forward, just not as much as he was. But what I would probably do is take Saliba down to a cheaper defender, and the three on screen are the ones I'll be looking at. They're all at slightly different price points, so Aït-Nouri at 4.4, Lucas Digne at 4.6, Rico Lewis at 4.8. Now, I'd say look at your other moves that you're planning on doing, because obviously you can afford all three of these, but if you want Palmer from next week, or you want Palmer, if you're doing two transfers and you'll need to get funds from Saliba to do another move, obviously you need to know what price point that you can buy a defender from. But if you can get to Rico Lewis and you don't already own him, then he is where I'll be going. We have seen earlier today, I'm recording this on Tuesday, comes out on Wednesday, but we have seen that Kyle Walker has come back from international duty with a little bit of an injury. So you would imagine that Rico Lewis will be playing all, or maybe not all, but most of their games in that right back, or inverted right back position until Kyle Walker is back fit. So that probably, hopefully, for Rico Lewis owners, extends to this weekend with Southampton at home. That's a fantastic fixture, obviously. The fixtures don't look great afterwards, but the fact that Rico Lewis is so attacking means that slightly worse fixtures matter less. So yeah, I would be going for Rico Lewis if you can. Then Aït-Nouri is the cheapest on this list. On this channel, we've talked previously about how good Wolves fixtures are. They basically had the hardest run from game weeks 1 to 8. You could even say game weeks 1 to 9, because Brighton away isn't easy. But from game week 10 onwards, their fixtures are fantastic. Obviously, you can see Crystal Palace at home, Southampton at home, Fulham away, Bournemouth at home, and then they play the other promoted teams as well. So Wolves have incredible fixtures. Aït-Nouri is ridiculously attacking. If you watched the Man City Wolves game the other day, you'll see Aït-Nouri just pops up in the number 10 or on the right. It's not even just down the left. On the right wing, he just randomly pops up. He's often one of the highest players on the pitch, even though I know we saw last season he was actually playing as part of a front three as a winger. This season he is playing as a left back, but he doesn't seem to stay there. He just gets so high. So yes, Wolves have conceded a lot of goals, but that probably is partly due to them being a bad defence, but also partly because they've had the hardest fixtures. If they are going to turn that around and keep a clean sheet or two, then it will be in these fixtures. So I think Wolves are great to invest in as a team, and I think Aït-Nouri is the best defender to go for. And then a bit of a differential option, Lucas Digne. If you have played FPL in the last couple of seasons, you know that Lucas Digne is a bit of a troll, as they like to say. Something always happens with him. He'll score an own goal or get dropped or get sent off. He just hasn't been good to own in FPL of late. But Villa defence has been one of the best. They haven't really been keeping clean sheets, but data-wise, their numbers are good. Their XGC is top 5 in the league, I believe. They just have been good defensively. They've just been conceding goals, similar to the likes of City, really. The fixtures aren't the best. Obviously, this week the fixture's good with Bournemouth at home. Then you've got Tottenham away, Liverpool away. That's pretty bad. They've been the 2 best attacks in the league this season so far. Then you've got Crystal Palace at home, though. So if you have players that work in Game Week 10, Game Week 11, but not 9 and 12, then have a look at how they rotate. Have a look at how Dean rotates with the other players in your team. But I just think he's going under the radar a little bit. The Villa defence is going under the radar a little bit, but I do definitely prefer the other 2 on screen. Okay, so staying on the theme of potentially selling Arsenal players, we've got Kai Havertz now. Now, there was a thought that he might be injured before Game Week 8 because he didn't go on international duty with Germany, but he did play the Bournemouth game in Game Week 8 for Arsenal, so there is no worries about his fitness anymore. He is fine, he is fit. But it's the similar problems that we've talked about with Saka and with Saliba. The fixtures just aren't great. Liverpool at home, Newcastle away, Chelsea away. The fixtures aren't the best. I mean, attacking wise, it probably is only that Liverpool at home fixture that isn't great. But I think if I owned Havertz, I sold Havertz last week to Solanke. So I don't have him anymore. That was a similar play to what I mentioned earlier where I'm probably wildcarding in Game Week 12. So I sold 2 Arsenal players, Havertz and Saka, for 2 Spurs players in Solanke and Son, so that I could move off of these bad fixtures for Arsenal for 4 weeks and get on these good Spurs fixtures for 4 weeks and then wildcard back in these Arsenal players. Again, I think it's team dependent. If you don't have many transfers, if you don't have a wild card, then it's harder to sell these guys because you know you'll want them back, and that is 2 transfers used up. But if you do have the transfers for it, I do think I would sell Havertz, and we will have a look at some of the replacements for him now. So in terms of replacements for Havertz, if I was selling Havertz, I would probably move him down to a more cheaper option like the 3 that we're going to go through on screen. But if you did want to move into someone of a similar price, there is obviously Watkins if you've got a little bit of funds to use. I don't think I'd go there personally. I think it's just quite a lot of budget to use up in that position, and the fixtures are okay, they're not great. Also, you could move to Solanke. I did the Havertz to Solanke move last week. Solanke is a little bit worrying though. His positioning isn't the best. He's been kind of dropping slightly deeper. If you've watched the games, it's kind of style-wise similar to how Firmino used to drop deeper and Mane and Salah used to kind of go in behind. I'm not suggesting they're the same quality, the front 3 of Spurs and the front 3 of that Liverpool one, but style-wise, that has kind of been quite similar. So Solanke hasn't been getting that involved in the final third. But with the good fixtures for Solanke, I think that he is still good enough and Spurs are still good enough that he'll be involved. So I think he is still a good pick. But if I was selling Havertz now, I would probably move down to a more budget option. Now, Chris Wood is the first one we'll look at. He has scored a ridiculous amount of goals. He has been absolutely fantastic. Ever since Nuno has come in, he's been brilliant. I think I saw a stat saying, I think he scored 15 goals in 24 games since Nuno's come in or something outrageous. But yeah, he's just brilliant. Finishing wise, he seems to just get these chances that are clear cut chances. He doesn't even get loads of them, but they're so clear cut that you can't really miss them at the time. It's brilliant if you're an owner. And the fixtures for the next few are pretty good. It's a bit of a mixed bag. The next 2 are obviously brilliant. Leicester away, West Ham at home. 2 struggling defences. So definitely a good option for them. Newcastle at home isn't even that bad. Arsenal away is bad, of course. Then Ipswich at home is a plum fixture. After that, it's Man City, I believe. So a bit of a mixed bunch fixture-wise, but I still think he's a fantastic option at 6.3 million. Then Cunha, we've talked about Wolves and their fixtures. Now, obviously, Wolves do have 2 options up front. Cunha for 6.5 or Strand Larsen for 5.5. The there's not actually that much between them. The only thing that Cunha has on his side is that he's probably taking penalties. So whether you think that's worth 1 million or not, I'm not so sure. I've put Cunha on screen, but like I say, that could easily be Strand Larsen if you wanted to save another million, go down to 5.5, because he seems a bargain at that price with the fixtures that they've got. Then we have Raul Jimenez. It makes me really happy that Raul Jimenez is back playing in the Premier League and scoring, because back in his Wolves days, he was absolutely fantastic. Even in FPL, he was a great option back then. Fulham have some very nice fixtures coming up as well. Everton away, Brentford at home, Crystal Palace away, Wolves at home. So the next 4 are really good. So if you're planning a maybe wildcard 12, wildcard 13, then he works very nicely for that. Even if not, he's just a really, really good option at 5.7 million. So cheap. So if you're looking for, and he's probably potentially even on penalties now. That's one thing I do want to mention quickly. Andreas Pereira took the penalty at the weekend against Aston Villa, and it was a pretty terrible penalty. He kind of rolled it, not even into the corner. Martinez saved it. So there is every chance that Raul Jimenez may take the next penalty. Andreas Pereira has actually got a terrible penalty record as well, so I'm not sure why he was even on them. But we've seen Raul Jimenez take penalties before for Wolves, so there is actually a pretty high chance that he is on penalties now. So I think he's a very, very good option. That's all for this video. If you liked it, make sure you drop a like. Make sure you do subscribe. It really helps. And I'll see you in the next one.